Shalom, this is Mary Omni from the World Government House of King David, Holy Covenant Constitutional Enforcer.
This is a Republic Notice. The title of this Republic Notice is called The Cover-Up of Judaic Black Americans' Exodus. The Cover-Up of Judaic Black Americans' Exodus. Okay, when we think of Exodus, we usually think of Egypt. But the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68 tells us that we went into a second Egypt, captivity. Now, the cover-up of Judaic, not Jewish, because we don't wish we were Jews. We are the real Judaizers. And Judaic is the identity, not Jewish. When we talk about us as a people, we are Judaizers. Our identity is Judaic. We are the original ones from Judea, okay? The Exodus in America occurred, and there was the river, the parting of the Red Sea. Now, why would it want to be covered up that we had did an Exodus? Okay, let me talk about the Exodus first. Now, we have a man by the name of Dred Scott. Now, as important as he is to the whole truth of the Civil War, he's all part of the cover-up. And here's the propaganda to cover him up. The propaganda to cover him up is to somehow look as though he failed at something. You know, the propaganda was he went to court and it was hereby declared there's no rights of a black man the white man has to respect, or something to that extent of propaganda. Why is it propaganda? It's propaganda because he successfully made our captors put on record on the Supreme Court that we were non-consenters because they said we had no legal rights. So that means no legal rights to consent, even though Judge Taney said we had constitutionality. We were framed in the Constitution. Okay? They framed us, but we had no legal rights to consent. Okay? So he made them put that on Supreme Court record, Dred Scott did. Okay? And this Supreme Court was before any U.S. corporation, way before any U.S. corporation, okay? A decade and a half before any U.S. corporation. So he put that on record, and Dred Scott said, okay, long as you put on that record that we didn't consent. Now here's something else Dred Scott did. Dred Scott was a manipulator of the North and the South. He reinforced John Brown, one of our white Ephraim brothers that don't hardly get no credit because we so busy hating the white man that we overlook John Brown, one of our brothers in white skin. But I can tell you the Most High don't overlook his children that serve his kingdom, regardless of skin color. But anyway, John Brown and his sons, in the service of the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, started agitating war to say these people should not be in bondage by the hands of man. What Dred Scott did, he went in there because he had this white woman, the same white woman today who want to bid black men all the time. She has the same spirit. She's a sorceress whore. And the same white woman who wants to bid black men is the sorceress whore, is the same white woman who took Dred Scott to court and said he had no right to leave, even though the male who supposedly owned him, after he died, had set him free. His wife said, I want him in bondage longer. And what do you see? Black men today want to be in bond with white women who want to keep them in bondage. So she opened her legs to him all the time. Anyway, Dred Scott was in the courts by the legal rights of the white woman. See, she had contractual rights. No matter how much she cried, black man got this before her, black people got this. She had legal rights to contract. And she agreed with everything until she saw black people getting constitutionality. That's when she started bucking. Other than that, she was in dutiful privilege, and she was okay not to have voting rights as long as she had contractual rights to own slaves. And so she the one had legal rights in the court. And that's how the case stayed in the court 10 years. And Dred Scott fighting. Okay, so what Dred Scott did was basically manipulate the North against the South. You know, what he did was put the guns in black men's hands again since the Revolution, Second Amendment. He reinforced John Brown and his sons. He made them put it on Supreme Court record that blacks was framed in the Constitution, which means they was in the four corners of the law of the Constitution and had no legal rights to consent to none of it, yet they were in it. And he made the war come about where the Red Sea parted for blacks to do an exodus out of chattel slavery. Because when the war started in 61, the North against the South, you had Esau warring against white Ephraim. And white Ephraim then said, let some of the Judah men come and help us. So they was warring against each other and the blood spilled. That was the Red Sea. And we walked out of chattel slavery through the Red Sea of the blood spill of the North and the South. One wanted to hold on to slavery and one didn't want to hold on to slavery. Because the one that didn't want to hold on to slavery said, if you hold on to it, none of us would be free. So the Red Sea party, they started warring against each other, and blacks was able to run and walk and join the army and go through the Red Sea and do an exodus. This exodus met up with 1862 into 1863 emancipation. That was the exodus, okay? At that particular time, that exodus occurs, that was a cosmic event, okay? It was put on record as a cosmic event called the Emancipation Proclamation. And the war started actually before the actual Emancipation Proclamation. So the war was kind of a catalyst to the Emancipation Proclamation. Thanks to Dred Scott, who was in Supreme Court and got an 1857 decision where Judge Taney said there is no legal rights of Dred Scott, and the Fifth Amendment overrode the Missouri Compromise. In other words, you didn't have no freedom in Missouri because you were still somebody else's property constitutionally. And the Fifth Amendment said you could not deprive a person of their property without due process or without compensation. And Dred Scott was considered property. Okay? Now, this exodus took place. And after this exodus, involuntary servitude was abolished in 1865. So the exodus was then written in the Constitution. And that non-consent that Judge Taney said that Dred Scott did not have no legal rights, so that means he couldn't consent. So that non-consent to involuntary servitude was put in the Constitution. So now it had legality. And it changed the Constitution from consent jurisdiction to non-consent jurisdiction, okay? Because it was a constitution that consented to slavery, so it had consent jurisdiction. When slavery was abolished constitutionally, the whole Constitution changed to non-consent jurisdiction of involuntary servitude, okay? So, and that right there sealed the Exodus. And then after the Exodus was sealed, in 1866, a Civil Rights Act gave us made us inherit all the Bill of Rights, because once a non-consenter, always a non-consenter. We inherit. In 1866, we inherited all the Bill of Rights, 1 through 10, and the 11th and 12th Amendment. We inherited all that as non-consenters, because we don't consent, okay? It's on Supreme Court record. 3/5 couldn't consent. Judge Haney told you, okay? And so then, after 1866, while we're in our exodus, the Republic of Alaska was purchased by Howard Seward of the Treasury Department, and that became non-consented land territory for the non-consenters, because it was right next to them, 1867. 1868, it sealed that Alaska territory as the capital of the New Jerusalem, because see, All this is the temple of the New Jerusalem being reconstructed. But see, a lot of people don't know we're Israelites, so they don't know that we're constructing the New Jerusalem through the hand of the Most High and King Jesus. So in 1868, blacks was put in the Constitution as the only constitutional and national citizens. Because in 1866, they became national citizens with jurisdiction rights over everything. And so it was constitutionalized in 1868, okay? In 1869, there was a period, a breakage. We're talking about the 70 weeks of Daniel now, because where are the Israelites? The whole Daniel prophecy, all time, everything is governed by us cosmically. Now, so by the time 1870 came, that was the 15th Amendment. The New Jerusalem wall went up, and non-consenters inherited, and it was a vote. So it was a non-consent supreme vote, which means that no one could come past that New Jerusalem wall. Okay, we had exited out of the whole consent nations. All the nations of consent we exited out of. And we had the New Jerusalem wall of non-consent up now. Now the temple from the inside still had to be built up, but we had the reconstructed temple there that came with our exodus. And this is why the exodus is covered up. Because the exodus is covered up because they don't want you to know the New Jerusalem has been reconstructed. Jerusalem is really the Y, if you take the J out, and you got Y-er, like Jer, Y-er, USA, lim, meaning moon and light, lunar, the New Jerusalem, Y-er, USA, of lunar supremacy, okay? That is the cover up of the Exodus. And anything was done to cover this up, any and everything. And then to add the icing on the cake, King Jesus, the Mashiach, rode in on a mule in 1871 to celebrate the reconstruction of the New Jerusalem temple. And that mule is what Lincoln promised us. I'll give you 40 acres and mule. This mule is the U.S. corporation. And since we're non-consenters, we couldn't consent to that. We inherited as our property subservient to the Constitution, because the U.S. mule only has acts, mule acts. It doesn't have one constitutional amendment. Even when those who want to cover up our exodus said they wanted to birth a new nation or wanted to add more amendments, they didn't start at 1. They started at 16, 17, 18, so they never birthed a new nation. What they did was try to cover up them parasiting off of our exodus, trying to pretend that they went out with us in the exodus, trying to pretend that they was part of the New Jerusalem. But they wasn't, because 1871 King Yeshua mule sat right next to the Jerusalem wall. And there he opened up a hole for Babylon, and there's a Babylon tower going to hell and debt and abomination contracts. So when they contract with our mule, they contracted really with the 10 centimeter anus where his dung come out. They're not even contracted with the 10-mile radius. They contracted 10 centimeters of the anus where his dung come out. They're abomination of desolation contractors, because they're not going to touch our contracts. They're written in the cosmic. Constitution is Fort Knox with the blood of King Yeshua. Okay? See, all this is a cover up for pretending that there was no exodus, so they can trample and steal. So all that's going on and all that's been going on since then is trampling and stealing our wealth, because all the land and everything is contracted to us. And we have non-consent supremacy that no one else can't own nothing, because like I said, Dred Scott had to put it on Supreme Court records even before we was putting the Constitution of Citizens that we're non-consenters. That's the power of Dred Scott. He was a light, honey. He was a cosmic light, a star. Don't you ever forget it. Don't let them brainwash you. And so the Exodus cover up is the wealth cover up, because our 300 to 400 years human capital wealth investment was protected and is protected by contract. So everybody who displayed anything, everything belongs to us. We don't have to take the mark of the beast and really need money, because we own everything by supreme contract. That's why the Exodus of the Judaic Black American was covered up, because the contract and wealth went right with them away from the world and Babylon claiming any of their wealth, because the Most High cut off the sacrifice and oblation with the 14th Amendment. It was a non-consented amendment because we couldn't consent, which means that everybody claiming the 14th has the stolen wealth, has the stolen wealth of Judah. But contractually, all their contracts of ownership are mule dung. I'm gonna leave it at that. This is Mary Omni from the House of King David. Shalom.